Imagine you're sitting alone at home on a quiet night, the kind where the world feels still and the only sound is the hum of your own thoughts. Maybe you're scrolling through your phone or watching TV, the soft glow of the screen the only source of light. Then, out of nowhere, there's a knock at the door. It's strange, right? Who knocks anymore? People text, they call, but a knock? That's old-fashioned, almost unnerving in its simplicity. You hesitate for a second, debating whether to answer. Finally, curiosity gets the better of you. You peek through the peephole and then crack open the door just a little. Standing there in the dim glow of your porch light are two kids. They look like they could be neighbors, maybe 10 or 12 years old. They're not crying or visibly hurt, but there's something off. Their clothes don't quite fit, their posture is stiff, and when they finally speak, their voices sound calm. Too calm. They were polite, sure, but it was rehearsed, like they've practiced this moment 100 times before. Then comes the request. It's simple, almost mundane. Can we come in? Maybe they want to use the phone or get out of the cold, but the longer they stand there, the more the pit in your stomach grows. Something isn't right, though you can't quite put your finger on it. And then, as you really look at them, you notice it. Their eyes. Black as midnight, bottomless, and staring right through you. You slam the door, your heart pounding, and your mind races with questions you can't answer. Who or what were they? What would have happened if you'd said yes? And why even now do you feel like they're still out there, waiting for another knock? This is the story of the Black-Eyed Children, a modern mystery that's as unsettling as it is unforgettable. The story of the Black-Eyed Children didn't just spring up overnight, although it might feel that way considering how quickly it became a modern urban legend. To truly understand their origins, we need to dig deeper into both ancient folklore and modern fears. Long before the internet ever existed, there were stories of entities that preyed on human kindness, disguising themselves to gain entry into homes or hearts. Across cultures, myths speak of creatures like fae or demons, taking on innocent or familiar forms to deceive and manipulate. In medieval Europe, for instance, folklore warned of changelings, children swapped with sinister fae imposters. In Japan, legends tell of yokai, supernatural beings who often disguise themselves as ordinary humans to cause harm. The Black-Eyed Children seem to echo these age-old fears, but with a distinctly modern twist. Their emergence as a phenomenon also says a lot about the era they're tied to. The 1990s, a time when technology was growing but still felt mysterious, marked a shift in the way we consumed and shared stories. Fear of strangers, urbanization, and distrust of the unknown became woven into the cultural consciousness. People were already on edge, and it's no surprise that tales of unnatural children knocking on doors late at night hit a nerve. They turned an everyday, seemingly mundane scenario, kids asking for help, into something straight out of a nightmare. Some even speculate that the Black-Eyed Children legend might not be new at all, but simply rebranded for the modern world. If you look at old ghost stories, you'll find recurring themes of eerie children or creepy visitors. The difference here is that the internet allowed these stories to spread faster and further, amplifying their reach and impact. While their roots might not be entirely clear, one thing is certain: the Black-Eyed Children legend feels like it's always been lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to grab our attention. While whispers of eerie, childlike figures with dark, unnatural eyes might have existed before, the modern legend of Black-Eyed Children truly started to take shape in the late 20th century. The first widely recognized account came from journalist Brian Bethel in 1996. His chilling experience in Abilene, Texas, became the spark that lit the wildfire of this urban legend. Bethel's story isn't just memorable because of the children's creepy appearance, it's the atmosphere he describes that hooks you. It's late at night, and he's parked near a movie theater, focused on writing a check. Everything is quiet, ordinary even, until two boys knock on his car window. They seem normal at first glance, just kids, maybe 10 or 12, asking for a ride home to grab money for a movie. But there's something about them that feels wrong. Their speech is oddly formal, their demeanor unnervingly confident for children. As they speak, Bethel feels an almost primal fear take hold, like every instinct in his body is screaming at him to get away. Then he notices their eyes, completely black. No whites, no irises, just endless voids. That's when the fear boils over. Bethel panics, muttering excuses as he drives off, leaving the boys behind. Later, reflecting on the encounter, he's struck by how unnatural it all felt. He shares his story online, where it spreads like wildfire. The internet, still a growing force in the mid-90s, becomes the perfect breeding ground for this kind of tale. People start sharing their own experiences, similar encounters with strange, dark-eyed children in different locations and circumstances. Interestingly, not all of these stories came from the internet. Some people came forward claiming to have encountered these beings long before Bethel's account was ever publicized. These older reports share striking similarities. Children with black eyes, polite but persistent requests to be let inside, and a paralyzing sense of dread. This retroactive connection makes some wonder. Have these beings been around far longer than we thought, slipping through the cracks of history unnoticed? Bethel's account may have popularized the phenomenon, but it's far from an isolated story. It opened the floodgates for countless other tales, each more unsettling than the last. And the pattern was clear. No matter when or where these encounters happened, the overwhelming sense of wrongness was always the same. If there's one thing that sets the black-eyed children apart from other paranormal beings, it's their unsettling blend of familiarity and wrongness. At first glance, they seem like ordinary kids, innocent, maybe even vulnerable. But the more you notice, the harder it is to ignore that something is off. It's not just their pitch-black eyes. It's everything about them, from how they dress to how they act. For starters, their clothing is strange. Witnesses often describe it as outdated, as if they're wearing hand-me-downs from decades past or items that don't quite fit right. A boy might be in an oversized hoodie, or a girl in a worn dress that looks like it came from a thrift store. It's subtle, but enough to make you wonder why kids in this day and age would be dressed like that, especially if they're wandering around at odd hours of the night. Then there's their speech and behavior. They're unnervingly polite, but their choice of words doesn't match their apparent age. Instead of saying, "Can I use your phone?" they might say, "We would like to use the telephone." There's something overly formal, almost rehearsed about their phrasing. It feels as though they're imitating human behavior rather than embodying it. They're also incredibly persistent. As we already mentioned, they've been known to knock on your door late at night or approach your car, often under the pretense of needing help, asking to come inside to use a phone, wait for a ride, or get out of the cold. But they never force their way in. Instead, they rely on your response. This is where it gets particularly chilling. They need you to invite them in. No matter how desperate their situation seems, they won't take a single step inside without your explicit permission. This behavior has led many to draw comparisons to folklore about vampires or other supernatural entities that can't cross thresholds uninvited. And then there's the fear. People who encounter black-eyed children describe an overwhelming sense of dread, often before they even notice the eyes. It's like their bodies know something is wrong before their brains can process it. The fear is almost paralyzing, an instinctual reaction to danger. Some say it feels like every nerve in their body is screaming at them to run, but they can't move. It's only later, after they've escaped, that they reflect on the details. The eyes are the final undeniable sign that these aren't normal kids. Entirely black, with no whites or irises. They seem to absorb light rather than reflect it. Witnesses describe them as cold, lifeless, and impossible to look away from. Once you see them, there's no mistaking that you're in the presence of something otherworldly, or worse, something dangerous. But the real horror is in what you don't know. If they can't come in without permission, what happens if you say yes? Some claim to have made the mistake of letting black-eyed children into their homes, and their stories are far from comforting. Once the children are inside, witnesses report a drastic change in atmosphere. The air becomes heavy and cold, as though all warmth is being drained from the space. Pets react violently, dogs bark or whimper in fear, and cats hide or hiss uncontrollably. The children, for their part, remain unnervingly quiet, often sitting or standing perfectly still, their black eyes tracking your every move. Letting them in also seems to have dire repercussions. Witnesses frequently report unexplained illnesses shortly after the encounter, anything from severe migraines and chronic fatigue to more serious ailments like recurring infections or even cancer. Bad luck often follows, with financial troubles, accidents, or even family tragedies striking in the days or weeks after the visit. In some cases, the aftermath escalates to paranormal activity. Lights flicker, electronics malfunction, and strange shadows appear in the corners of rooms. It's as though letting them inside leaves a mark, an open door for something darker to linger. The black-eyed children themselves rarely return, but their presence seems to invite chaos and fear long after they've gone. What's perhaps most terrifying is that their purpose remains a mystery. Witnesses describe feeling as though the children were studying them, as if searching for something. But the exact nature of their intentions is unclear. Whether they're feeding off fear, draining energy, or marking their victims for something worse, no one truly knows. Whatever they are, one thing is clear. The black-eyed children aren't just looking for help. They want something more, and we're sure it's not something you'd want to give. In the decades since Brian Bethel's encounter, reports of black-eyed children have cropped up across the globe, each new sighting adding layers of fear and fascination to the growing legend. What's especially unsettling is how varied these encounters can be. Sometimes they're seen in rural, isolated areas, other times in the heart of busy cities. But no matter where they appear, one thing is consistent: the chilling impact they leave on those who encounter them. One particularly infamous case comes from Vermont, where a couple claimed to have encountered two black-eyed children during a snowstorm. It was a bitterly cold night when, you guessed it, they heard a knock at the door. Opening it, they found two children, a boy and a girl, standing on the porch, looking underdressed for the weather. They asked to come inside, saying they needed to wait for their parents. The couple, unnerved but sympathetic, let them in. Once inside, things took a turn. The children sat quietly on the couch, not moving or speaking unless prompted. Their behavior was unnaturally calm, almost robotic. The couple's cat, normally friendly, hissed and hid under the furniture. Soon after, the husband noticed their eyes, completely black, like twin voids. As fear gripped him, the power suddenly went out, plunging the house into darkness. Moments later, the children were gone. In the following days, the couple reported severe illnesses, recurring nightmares, and a string of bad luck, leaving them convinced that the children brought something dark into their home. Other stories come from drivers traveling at night. In one account, a man described seeing a child on the side of a desolate road, waving him down. Concerned, he stopped and rolled down the window, only to feel an immediate and overwhelming sense of fear. The child approached, asking for a ride, but the man noticed his eyes were pitch black. Terrified, he sped off, leaving the child behind. Later, when he checked the rearview mirror, there was no one there. Even in busy urban settings, these eerie encounters have been reported. A woman in an apartment complex described hearing, once again, persistent knocking at her door late one evening. When she opened it, two children stood there, heads bowed. They asked to come inside to use the phone, but something about their demeanor sent chills down her spine. Trusting her instincts, she refused, and they became agitated. The longer she stood there, the more oppressive the atmosphere felt, until she finally slammed the door and locked it. Peeking through the peephole moments later, she found the hallway empty. What's strange is how similar these stories are, despite the different settings and circumstances. Witnesses often describe the same sense of overwhelming dread, the same need for the children to be invited in, and the same eerie disappearance when they're denied access. And for those who claim to have let them inside, the aftermath is often marked by lingering unease, illness, or even death in the family. These modern sightings suggest that the black-eyed children aren't confined to any one place or time. They show up wherever and whenever they please, always with the same unnerving agenda. And while some might dismiss these encounters as overactive imaginations or shared myths, the consistency in the details makes it hard to ignore. Whether they're knocking in a snowy Vermont town or flagging down cars on lonely highways, their presence feels like a warning. Don't engage, don't open, and whatever you do, don't say yes. The black-eyed children are one of those phenomena that spark endless debates about what they are, or if they even exist at all. Theories about their nature range from supernatural to psychological, each one as unsettling as the next. Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, it's impossible to deny that something about them gets under your skin. One of the most popular theories is that black-eyed children are not children at all, but something paranormal masquerading as innocent kids. Their black eyes are often interpreted as a sign of demonic possession, while their strange speech patterns and robotic demeanor hint at something inhuman trying to mimic human behavior. Many point to their inability to enter without permission as a direct link to vampire lore, where the act of invitation grants supernatural beings access to your home, and possibly your soul. In this context, the children might be harbingers of doom or spirits sent to collect energy or life force. Witnesses who report lingering illness or bad luck after their encounters often describe these effects as being drained, as if the children took something intangible yet vital. Another common theory suggests that the black-eyed children might be extraterrestrial beings or alien-human hybrids. Their unnerving, almost but not quite human appearance fits with descriptions of uncanny valley encounters often associated with extraterrestrial sightings. Their strange formal speech and outdated clothing might hint at beings trying, but failing, to blend into human society. Supporters of this theory often tie the black-eyed children to UFO sightings. Some reports describe glowing lights or strange phenomena in the areas where these children are encountered. Could they be scouts, sent to observe humanity up close? Or are they something else entirely, beings from another dimension who only resemble humans as we understand them? Of course, there's also the possibility that black-eyed children are simply a modern myth, born from the internet and fueled by our fascination with the strange. Like Slender Man or other urban legends, the black-eyed children could be a reflection of societal fears, our discomfort with strangers, our mistrust of innocence, and our anxiety about the unknown. If they are a myth, they're an incredibly effective one. Their stories resonate because they're simple yet deeply unsettling. A knock at the door, a polite request, a creeping sense that something is horribly wrong. These are scenarios anyone can relate to, which makes the legend all the more haunting. While these theories offer different explanations, none of them provide definitive answers. Maybe that's the scariest part, the idea that we still don't know what the black-eyed children are or what they want, and until we do, they remain an unsolved mystery, lurking in the shadowy spaces where the natural and the unnatural blur together. The black-eyed children have become an unlikely cultural icon, finding their way into books, movies, podcasts, and even casual conversations about the paranormal. Part of their appeal lies in their simplicity. There's no convoluted backstory or overly elaborate setup. They knock, they ask, and they leave you questioning everything. Their rise in popularity also speaks to the power of the internet in shaping and spreading folklore. Before the 1990s, stories like these might have stayed local, passed along through word of mouth. But in an age where anyone can share their experiences online, the black-eyed children went global. Each new story adds to their mystique, making them feel like a phenomenon rather than an isolated incident. From a psychological standpoint, these children represent a collision of fears. Fear of strangers, fear of deception, and the deep unease that comes from encountering something not quite human. Their black eyes push them into the uncanny valley, triggering a primal discomfort. Even their insistence on being invited inside feels like a violation of personal boundaries, a direct challenge to our sense of safety. But there's also a broader societal element to their impact. In a world that's increasingly interconnected yet distrustful, the black-eyed children symbolize our collective anxiety about intrusion. Whether it's someone at the door or something far more abstract, they've become a mirror for our unease, reflecting the things we'd rather not confront. At their core, the black-eyed children are a puzzle. Are they real, or are they just another example of how stories can take on a life of their own? It's this ambiguity that makes them so haunting. If they're real, they represent an unknown danger that defies explanation. If they're not, they're a testament to the power of human imagination and the fears that unite us. For believers, the black-eyed children are a real and present threat. Their stories serve as warnings. Trust your instincts, don't ignore the dread, and never invite them in. For skeptics, they're a fascinating example of how folklore evolves in the modern age. Either way, they leave an impact. Whether they're real or imagined, the black-eyed children remind us of something we'd rather forget. That sometimes, the scariest thing is the unknown. So, what do you think? Are the black-eyed children just another urban legend, the kind that thrives on the internet and late-night whispers? Or is there something more to these chilling stories? Whether you're a skeptic or a believer, one thing's for sure: they make you think twice about who you'd let into your home. And now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had an experience that made the hair on the back of your neck stand up? Maybe something that didn't quite add up, left you questioning what's real. Drop your thoughts or your own stories in the comments below. Let's dive into this together. Oh, and while you're here, don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this dive into the unknown. If you're as fascinated by the strange and unsettling as I am, make sure to subscribe for more. You'll never look at the ordinary the same way again. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.